32 games in Brisbane. First, though, look, I've been telling you forever how the once great state of Victoria is broke. Crippled by debt, run by a state government that arrogantly continues to plough billions of dollars into the most expensive transport infrastructure project in the state's, possibly the nation's history. Debt has to be repaid, though. Now, eventually the chickens come home to roost. What we are now seeing is vital services like health hit by budget cuts. Treasurer Tim Pallas even this week said, well, the money has to come from somewhere. And he hinted at potential new taxes, saying, we'll look at it, probably won't be any new property taxes because that well has been well and truly drunk dry. Great message from him. Joining me is Jess Wilson, Shadow Finance Minister and Economic Reform Spokesman for the Opposition. Welcome, Jess. Just before we get into the bigger picture economically, I want to talk red tape in a sec with you because I know you've got a lot of views on that. I was talking this week to a Victorian public servant, reminded me under a wages deal struck between the public service unions and the broke Victorian state government that public servants are all about to get a one-off cost of living payment of $5,600. That can't be right, can it?
It is right, and it's going to cost over $300 million at a time Victoria simply cannot afford it. And Steve, if you look at the public service here in Victoria, it has doubled over the course of the last 10 years of this Labor government. The growth of the public service has far exceeded population growth in Victoria, and most importantly, the number of executives have tripled. Now, that is just simply not sustainable here at a time, as you say, we're at record debt, $188 billion, $26 million a day in interest repayments. That means that we're going to have to make cuts when it comes to our health services. Schools aren't going to be built or even fixed.
It's staggering. I'm told that that payment will go to people on salaries up to $250,000. I'm further told that the payment will be made to public servants who are out of the public service, that they were in the public service when this deal was struck. They will still get the cheque. That can't be true, can it?
Well, surely that can't be true, and questions need to be put to the government as to who is receiving this. But what it does demonstrate is this government, time and time again, looks for avenues to get around what you would see as sort of on-the-track deals. And if you look at the public service, they're getting a 3% annual pay rise, but this is on top of that. But when you look at the executives, time and time again, I see applications coming for the executives to get top-up payments, far exceeding the band, and we see them on projects like the North East Link, WorkCover. The North East Link is the biggest project blowout in the history of Victoria. WorkCover is an agency in collapse.
On what planet does a government agree to pay a cost of living payment to their own employees of $5,600 when non-public servants are all required to be back at work in their offices? Our public servants, unlike New South Wales, are not. That just slaps the face of every hard-working, taxpayer-paying Victorian.
That's right. And if you think about how much pressure Victorians are under when it comes to the increased taxes in this state, year on year, budget on budget, we're seeing the government put up property taxes, put up taxes on payroll, so private businesses having to pay the state for the privilege of staying open and keeping our economy productive. This is really, really concerning that time and time again we're seeing this in the public service. But it's also at the same time where we've got protracted industrial disputes with our frontline public servants, with our paramedics, with our firefighters, with our police. The government isn't able to close those deals, but they're able to do this deal with the public service.
Your Shadow Finance, the ratings agencies, they must surely be looking at this administration and going, well, we're going to have... I mean, Tim Pallas, the Treasurer, says he went to New York and they said, oh, it's all fine. That can't be true.
Well, we know he had to make an emergency trip to New York to try and talk to the rating agency, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, about Victoria's rating agency. Ratings, because it is on the precipice. We know that. The ratings agency have said that Victoria cannot continue to see its debt go up, but we're seeing them still commit to major projects like the Suburban Rail Loop, something that isn't funded in the budget. In fact, in the budget, it has a TBC line item next to it. That's going to cost more than $40 billion just for the first stage. The ratings agencies are very, very aware of this.
Something just struck me. I just wonder whether the state government is hanging out for the federal government to go to the polls, have an election and get back, maybe, and then they'll bail out Victoria. Because they couldn't do that in the lead up to a federal election. They couldn't say, OK, we're going to have to bail out Victoria. That'd kill them politically. You suspect that might be something happening
We have
behind
heard
the
from
scenes?
time to time that, the idea that Victoria might have to be bailed out. I don't think that Australian taxpayers would be overly pleased more broadly by that. What we need to do is rein in spending. We need to be able to live within our means within Victoria, not see every single major project blow out. $40 billion of cost blowout on projects to date. We know the corruption is rife within these projects. We've seen what's happening with the CFMEU. And then we've got projects like the Suburban Rail Loop coming forward, going to cost over $40 billion.
Well, I saw your colleague Michael O'Brien today say scrap it. I mean, if you were doing the numbers as a responsible government, and Tim Pallas as a treasurer and Jacinda Allen as a premier, wouldn't you at some point come to the realisation that you can't afford that and that you've got to stop it before it costs more money?
Absolutely. If you are a responsible government and you're looking at your finances, you know that this does not stack up. It is a train line from Box Hill to Cheltenham that services just one part of the state. It's putting all your eggs in one basket, and it means that infrastructure can't be spread right across the state, particularly in our growth areas and our regions. And if you look at the state of our roads in regional Victoria, then we know that it's absolutely essential that we actually spend that infrastructure money much more widely.
Yeah, I smashed through a couple of potholes today. Talk to me about red tape. How bad is it in Victoria when you compare it to the other states?
Well, Victoria is the red tape capital of the nation. It's simply the hardest place to do business. And what came out this week was a secret study that the government had undertaken with the National Australia Bank that shows that when it comes to impact and compliance, Victoria leads the nation in terms of red tape and regulatory burden.
Would I be staggered if you went through line by line what I would need to do to open a business?
Absolutely. The licensing, whether it's the registration requirements, you talk to any small business owner and what they say, it's the time burden of having to fill out form after form after form just to keep their doors open, to try and employ another person. We want to create jobs in this state, but what we're seeing is businesses exit the border.
And if you were to win the election, that's not a hard thing to reform, is it?
No, that's right.
You just rip it up.
Well, red tape is something we really want to focus on because it's a very easy way to actually make it easier to do business. Take that time burden off small business owners to make sure that we're in a situation where they can focus on running their business, growing their business, and not just trying to keep their doors open.
How pessimistic are you about Victoria's finances?
Look, it's a big task ahead, but we have to do it. The state is depending on a responsible...
Repair job will be massive.
It'll be huge. It'll be huge. But we're up to the task. We're incredibly focused on thinking about how do we turn this state around? How do we drive investment back into Victoria? We've got the South Australian Premier, we've got New South Wales, Queensland, all knocking on our door and saying to Victorian businesses, exit the state. The property industry, exiting the state. We need to look at our tax system. We need to make it something that people want to come to Victoria and invest in, and we're very focused on that.